What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss even more new iOS 18.3 features and talk about where iOS 18.4 Beta 1 is. We have an update on the upcoming iPhone SE 4. Apple is developing software for some upcoming smart glasses, a crazy AirTag story, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with everything going on in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Okay, so this past week, we saw Apple finally release iOS and iPadOS 18.3 to the general public after quite a bit of beta testing. However, it's not near what we're going to see for iOS 18.4. We'll talk about that in a moment. But let's first talk about some of the additional new features and changes in iOS 18.3, because there were actually a couple that we did not know about until after the RC and when the final version came out. So the first one is something that you cannot actually see, and that is that Apple added support for Starlink with T-Mobile. So if you guys remember, at the end of last year, T-Mobile announced that they will be bringing Starlink to their service for the iPhone. Now, with this integration, a T-Mobile iPhone without cell signal, so if you don't have any signal, you're going to be able to pair automatically with Starlink satellites for connectivity. You won't even have to point it at the sky like you have to for emergency SOS. It will just automatically connect, which in my opinion is a big deal. I mean, I can see this being very beneficial for first responders or for just people who live maybe deep in wilderness or live in other countries where maybe they don't have great signal or service. Now, this will be US only at first, but it will expand after that. And it's also going to be texting only at first as well. So eventually it will roll out to be data and voice, but it will start as just texting. But it's great to know that we're going to have satellite connectivity now for non-emergencies, because before, if you wanted to use, satellites, if you didn't have signal, you had to be an emergency. You had to call 911 and you had to have some type of emergency. But now, even if you're not in an emergency, you can use satellite connectivity to, text loved ones or just keep up to date with what's going on in the outside world if you don't have any signal. So that is a big deal, and it is in beta right now for some T-Mobile customers. And of course, it will roll out more as time goes on, but that's included with 18.3. And then we did also see the new Unity wallpaper get added. So if you go to the plus right here, you will see up in featured, we do have Unity Rhythm right there. You could also go down to the Unity section and you can see the new wallpapers right there. So it does show all of the different colors. If you tap on this, you will see the different styles that you get. So you have all these gold, green, red, and so on. My favorite is the just default Unity right here. Now there is a really cool animation as always with this wallpaper. So if we go ahead to our lock screen here and then we swipe up, you can kind of see the animation there as it goes to the home screen. So very cool. Apple always kills it with the animations on these Unity wallpapers. Really any of their default wallpapers have such cool animations. Now also included in iOS 18.3 were several security patches, which we knew was going to be the case, but we didn't know the extent of them because Apple does not publish these security patch notes until the official version gets released. But you can see all of them right here. Now, thankfully, there's only one bug in here that was being actively exploited, but there are several other bugs in here, and this alone is enough reason to go ahead and want to upgrade to 18.3, even if you didn't find any of the new features compelling enough to upgrade. It's good to keep your device as secure as possible always. And we'll come back to the performance and the battery life on 18.3 in a moment, but also this week, Apple revealed the adoption rate for iOS 18. So they put this chart up here and it says that iOS 18 is currently installed on 68% of all iPhones and on 76% of iPhones that were released in the last 4 years. And then of those devices released in the last 4 years, 19% are running iOS 17 still, and only 5% are running iOS 16 or earlier. And you can see these numbers are very similar to iOS 17's numbers from last year. Now, as for the iPad, far less users have updated to iOS 18 or iPadOS 18, but it does sit at 63% for iPads introduced in the last 4 years. Now, also this week, we saw that Instagram is testing a pause feature for Instagram Reels. So similar to what we have on TikTok, where you can tap the screen to pause it. Right now on Instagram Reels, you have to tap and hold, and you have to keep your finger there to pause the reel. But once you let go, it unpauses. So it looks like Instagram is working on an actual pause feature for Reels, and it's in beta testing right now for a small number of people. And by the way, if you don't follow me on Instagram, you should go head over there and follow me. I post stories all the the time. Of course, I do have some posts here as well about iOS 18.3, the new Samsung phone, and so on. So it's just at Brandon Butch over there on Instagram. Also this week, we saw Netflix bring full season downloads to the iPhone and the iPad. So you can now go to a show and download the full season with one tap. We also got an update to the Apple Sports application, which has grown to be just an excellent application all around. I've loved it since day one, but just continuously gets better. So you can see it's now on version 2.4, and we do have some updates here. So it says the Apple Sports soccer lineup keeps getting bigger with the FA Cup, EFL Championship, and League Cup. You can also navigate between your favorites quicker with a simple swipe gesture, and you can tune into all national games with broadcast information on the game pages. Now, I did also want to bring up DeepSeek R1 because unless you were under a rock this week, you know all about DeepSeek R1, the new free AI model that costs significantly less than, OpenAI's ChatGPT, their O1 model. I made a full video on DeepSeek R1, so if you're lost, if you want to learn more about DeepSeek and why some people say it's better than ChatGPT, it's actually overtaken ChatGPT in the App Store charts. It's number one out of any application in the App Store. So if you want to learn more about that, I did make a full video. I'll leave that up in the cards and down in the description below. But I have to ask you guys, what do you think of DeepSeek so far? Because we did also see later this week that OpenAI was basically calling out DeepSeek, saying that they trained their model using OpenAI's data. So OpenAI says that they have evidence that DeepSeek was using its proprietary models to train the DeepSeek model, which is a violation of their TOS. However, obviously ChatGPT stole content, stole everything from the entire internet. So I don't really think they have room to talk. And I'm pretty sure the copyright laws don't work that way. I'm pretty sure that what DeepSeek did is not illegal under the copyright law, but we'll have to wait and see. This is a pretty big deal in the AI world. I know it's not exactly related to iPhone and iOS, but I still did want to mention it here. And then also this week, if you have a Vision Pro, if you're one of the few people with a Vision Pro, we did see that NVIDIA's GeForce Now is available on the Vision Pro in Safari. So there's no dedicated app, but you will have access to the 2,000 plus applications or games that you get with that service. Now, these are not, VR specific games. They're just PC titles, but it's still pretty cool to see. Now, coming back to iOS 18.3 here. So I did run a fresh Geekbench test today to see how it scores compared to previous runs. And we scored a 3535 on the single core, 8803 on the multi-core. And you can see how that compares to previous runs right there. So it's pretty similar to what we scored on January 17th, but you can kind of see how that score is right there compared to everything else. Now, performance overall for me has been great. I've said that since the beginning, since the betas even, performance has been great here with iOS 18.3. And if you look through my comments on my 18.3 What's New video, which if you missed that, that'll also be linked in the cards and in the description below. But I haven't really seen many people talk about issues whatsoever. The only issues I'm seeing are people who always say the same thing about the keyboard lagging. So the keyboard lag is one thing I've seen a lot, but again, I see that with literally every single version of iOS 18 and 17 and 16. So, I don't think that's necessarily related to iOS 18.3. But aside from that, I really haven't seen anything else that's very widespread. So if you have any issues with performance in 18.3, please let me know in the comment down below so I can report on that and bring attention to it. And then as far as battery life goes, battery life has been fine for me on 18.3. Now, I don't think it's a substantial upgrade over iOS 18.2. If we look at my main device here, I actually have been using my device a lot more lately than I normally do, but you can kind of see how the battery life is here on 18.3. So not a major jump from 18.2.1, but I have noticed that battery life is a little bit better. But yeah, my usage has been off the charts lately for some reason. Okay, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple, because this is where we have a lot of question marks. So we are currently in February. By the time you're watching this video, it will be February 1st. So happy February. Now, 18.4 beta 1 is the next release that we should see for beta testers. So that could come as early as next week, the week of February 3rd. However, I think that we could get it as late as the week of February 17th, maybe on February 18th right there. That is the latest. I'm not saying it's coming out then. I'm just saying that we have pretty much a 3-week span of when we can expect to see iOS 18.4 beta 1. Why is that? So the reason being is because we're not going to see the final public release until April. Apple has already said that we're going to get a big software update in April, which of course that's going to be 18.4. So Apple does not typically, go 2 full months of beta testing. Now it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just letting you you guys know that typically it's like a month to a month and a half of beta testing. There are outliers, of course, as well, but we could be seeing 18.4 Beta 1 as early as February 3rd or as late as the week of February 17th. Now, if I had to guess, if you're asking me personally, I do not think it's going to be the week of the 17th. I think it's going to be before that, but I'm just putting out the facts there of when it could possibly come. Because if you look, MacRumors did some digging here and they found the release dates from previous 0.3 updates to the 0.4 Beta 1 update. And you can see that down here with iOS 13, there was 57 days in between. And with iOS 16, there was 24 days in between. So clearly there's a possibility of waiting quite a while until we get that 0.4 Beta 1 update. But anyways, after that, we should be seeing in between iOS 18.3 and 18.4, we will undoubtedly get an 18.3.1. Just because they're so long in between, it's pretty hard to imagine us not getting 18.3.1. So I do think that we're going to see that at some point in maybe late February to early March would be my guess for an 18.3.1. It kind of just depends on what Apple finds and how they go about fixing that. But that will be the next public release. And then of course, after that, we will see 18.4 public release in April. Anyways, moving on to the latest Apple news. Let's start by talking about the iPhone SE 4, because we've been going back and forth about whether or not it's going to have a dynamic island or whether it's going to have a notch. We've seen rumors from both sides very heavily. Even some of the, leaked images and the prototypes had the dynamic island, but now we're hearing from one of the most reliable sources in the game on display technology, Ross Young. He's saying that it will have a notch like the iPhone 14. And when I read something like this from Ross Young, I just completely ignore all the other rumors and any future rumors that will be coming out, because he is usually the one that is correct. So it looks like we will have a notch on the iPhone SE 4, which to me seems pretty obvious. I don't think that Apple is going to add a dynamic island there if they wanted to keep the price under $500. So we are going to have a notch. It's probably going to be a pretty substantial notch, like a pretty large notch with some bezels, just because this is the entry-level, cheapest iPhone that Apple's going to sell. And I have to ask you guys, how much do you think this iPhone SE 4 is going to cost? Like, we've heard rumors that it's going to be under $500, which means probably $499. But what do you think? What do you think the cost of this new complete redesign for the SE series, how much do you think it's going to cost? So I think it'll probably be in the $499 range. I think it even could go up to $529, but I'm curious to know what you guys think. I do also think it depends on the starting storage, if it's 64 or 128, which my guess would be 128. Now, also this week, we heard from Mark Gurman over at Bloomberg that Apple is currently developing a version of Vision OS for future smart glasses. So he said this in his latest newsletter. So he said, while it develops the AR technology for future devices, Apple is conducting user studies at its offices to gauge the appeal of features and interfaces. Apple is already working on a version of Vision OS that will run on glasses. It's also exploring other types of wearable products, including a rival to Meta's Ray-Ban spectacles and even camera-equipped AirPods. All right, so we have an update here. So after I recorded this episode, we got news from Mark Gurman that Apple has canceled the Mac-connected AR smart glasses. He said that these glasses performed poorly during reviews with executives and the desired features continued to change. So they said that basically the final word came this week that the effort was over. They're going to stop working on them. Gurman said that this device had advanced projectors that could display information, images, and video in the field of view for each eye, similar to the AR glasses being developed by Meta and others. And he says, despite the project being shuttered, Apple is still working on underlying technologies that could be used in AR glasses down the road, including custom micro LED type screens. Now, also late this week, we did see Apple announce their Q1 2025 earnings report. So they showed record numbers for revenue here. So you can see their total revenue was $124 billion, $124.3 billion. And as far as iPhone revenue, that was $69 billion. Mac revenue was almost $9 billion. iPad revenue, $8 billion. Wearables, home and accessories, $11.75 billion. And services, a whopping $26.34 billion, which is insane. And then of course we can see their gross margin is 46.9%, which is a little bit higher than estimates. So overall, a pretty solid quarter for Apple. Nothing groundbreaking, but pretty solid. And then finally, we have another crazy AirTag story. So this time, a man in Colorado had his two specialized mountain bikes worth a combined $13,000 stolen from his condo's bike rack. rack. But fortunately for him, he did have AirTags hidden inside of both of them. So the next morning, when he realized they'd been stolen, he pulled up the Find My app to locate the bikes and saw them traveling south on the highway. So he called police and gave them real-time location updates, and they followed the signal until it stopped at a truck stop. That's when police were able to locate a van that appeared to have bikes covered with a tarp on the rooftop cargo rack. The driver of the van consented to a search of the vehicle, and police located one of those stolen bikes with the AirTag in it. So the man was arrested, and police impounded the van before executing a search warrant on it, where they discovered an additional 17 bicycles that had been stolen. But the driver was not the one stealing the bikes, because after police gathered additional information and evidence like phone records and CCTV footage, they were able to identify the mastermind, and they even found messages of him trying to sell the bikes. So that mastermind was a 34-year-old man who was already serving a 6-year sentence for theft, but now he's charged with theft between $20,000 and $100,000, and that is a class 4 felony. So I'm sure he'll be behind bars for quite some time now. And by the way, this was part of a 2-year investigation. So it took 2 years for him to be arrested for this crime, which is pretty crazy. But without this AirTag, this whole scheme, would have never been uncovered. So shout out to the AirTags as always. Anyways, that's it for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment with your thoughts down below on any of the stories or 18.3 as a whole. And also be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And if you want to see more, if you want to see next week's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.